Chef Ogilvy survives Wingfoot.
Now the moment Aaron Badley has waited.
Gary Webb is the 5-time Australian Open champion.
Golf at its best by one of the best in golf, Peter Thompson.
Stand in front of a crowd like this today and win the PGA Championship is pretty special.
He's done it at last. Greg Norman.
Matt Jones gets his name on the Stonehaven Cup.
Leishman to 11 under. Now we've got a new leader, kids.
There it is! Adam Scott. A life changer. Coming up next, you have unrestricted access to golf across Australia and the world. Thanks to Golf Australia, we're going inside the ropes.
G'day everybody, welcome to Inside the Ropes episode 24. Lovely to have you with us again on a very big week this week. Not only some of the golf that's been played around the world, but the announcement that the committee of the Hero World, whatever it's called, his own tournament, has let Tiger Woods back in. Hayesy, Mark Hayes, joins us, having just dominated the airtime over at the Asia and Amateur Championship. Hello to you, my friend.
And there's so much that's going to happen to me in this episode. I can feel it.
Get ready.
Mario, I feel like the Peter Gunn theme should be playing because we put the band back together here today. Big thanks to Half last week for holding the fort
absolutely.
alongside Blakey and Joe. Thanks, Half. You did a reasonable job for someone who's just a fair golfer.
Hello, Blakey.
Hello, Mari. And did you like Tiger's little announcement of his return? The committee of one. Thanks to the committee of one for sleep. That was quite nice, wasn't it?
It gives me hope. It gives me hope, Hayesy and Blakey, that everything he's been through has given him some sort of perspective. Because it was a bit self-deprecating.
Yeah.
It was a bit funny. It was nice, and hopefully the Tiger we get to see, whatever this version actually looks like as a golfer, hopefully it's one that just has a smile on his face and enjoys what the game has given him, what he's given the game, obviously, but just enjoys his time out there. He's not, hopefully it would be great if there was a bit of the menace and a bit of what he had in the past, but hopefully he does it with a bit of a smile on his face from now on.
Well, I think one year he actually won that event, his own event, and I don't know whether you've ever seen the footage of it, Hayesy, but he went to the presentation, and usually he presents the trophy to whoever wins it. He won it, so he said, I've always wanted to do this, so congratulations, Tiger, and he started talking to himself, which is quite amusing. So there is a sense of humour in there somewhere. So, look, it's great to have him back. I think I want to set a low bar for this. I don't want to get people to get too excited about it because it's a long way from back fusion surgery to winning tournaments on the PGA Tour or major tournaments. So let's just see how he goes. Maybe he can just get to play some golf, and that'd be great.
I second everything you just said, Blakey. I just don't think that he's capable of winning something in the near future. But that said, his best is the best. How far removed from that, we don't know. So set the low bar, see what happens. Andy, I've got more of an axe to grind against the actual tournament, to be honest.
Well, we've got a very big show coming up. Jack Newton not too far away from joining us as we continue our road to the Open. And you've got a fantastic story about the old and the young going head-to-head in a club championship, which we'll get to towards the end of the show. But don't let me stop you while you're on a roll.
Well, I don't want to talk about it for too long, but this is an event that is neatly tucked maybe 1 or 2 weeks after the last fall series in inverted commas Craig event on the wraparound USPGA Tour. It automatically takes away the 20 best, in theory, but money-hungry players in the USPGA Tour. I can say that. No one's, going to bite me for that. Meanwhile, the poor Australian Tour struggles to attract people. And, we all hear about Thanksgiving and the long season and the representative duties for the Ryder Cup or the President's Cup. It's absolutely mystifying how they can all get out of bed and fly over to the Bahamas for a week. Honestly, stop pulling our chain, you guys. Start speaking fair dinkum to the average golf fan. I'm sick of it. I'm absolutely sick of it. And, surely there's another week in the year where this tournament can be held. Don't deprive the outpost, as I heard one of the Augusta National members say at Royal Wellington this week. Don't deprive the outpost of their 2 milliseconds in the sun.
So even that language doesn't help.
Oh,
I mean,
mate.
even that language is a window into the soul and psyche of the American hardcore golf fraternity.
It riles me. I'm sort of a bit of a tinderbox here, ready to go today, because there's so many things that are annoying me, and we've got our season coming up here, and we should be celebrating the return of all the Australian players, just across the board, and maybe one or two others, and the interest of the world golfing community. Instead, naturally, this is the week of the Australian PGA Championship, which has got a ripping field. It's been bolstered this morning by Mark Leishman. Instead, we're going to be talking about a bloke who may or may not be able to fly economy class across to the Bahamas because his back's knackered. It's just wrong to me.
Yeah.
I understand. It's Tiger Woods, the best player ever was. I get all that. But seriously, this is the wrong time of the year. We've got 2 weeks in this country to shine, and this is wrong.
What's the solution, Blakey?
More money, I think, but there is no real solution. I mean, you've
They
got to
play for
have
enough,
bigger prize pools.
But they play for enough. I don't reckon it is the money. I mean,
It's partly that, and the distance is an issue.
Yeah.
There's 3 or 4 things, but
But
I'm not sure whether it's easily solvable.
Don't give me this crap about I'm too tired to come to Australia. You're not too tired to jump on a plane and fly from Chattanooga or across to the Miami and then out to the Bahamas. I mean, what do you think about this, Andy?
I agree. Look, your frustration is shared by all lovers of Australian golf.
Yeah.
Because we think we've got the great courses, some of the great golf courses in the world. We think we've got a couple of great championships that deserve. The thing that annoys me about it is that our place in world golf is established. Australian men and women golfers have been, some of the great champions of the game. So for international players to come to Australia and potentially put their name on one of these trophies should be incentive enough to just make them go, before I finish my career, I want to do that. I want to go down and see what these great courses are. What we are reduced to every single year is please come down. Grovel, beg, get on your knees, pray to God that the Australian players are going to commit if they can. And we understand occasionally there are professional reasons, qualifying schools and that sort of stuff, that precludes them from
another
here.
event,
exactly.
like the President's Cup when it's here.
A genuine, reason for
appearance money too, Andy. That's that becomes part of the
issue.
It does,
as well. Unfortunately, Blakey. But it'd just be nice if we didn't have to beg and just hold our breath, hoping that we're going to get good representation.
Couldn't agree more. And I hope one day in the next few months on this program, whenever we come back after Christmas, that we can have an expose on appearance money, because I think it would just be gut-wrenching to the average golf fan to listen.
Talk to me about...
It's never public, is it?
No, never public. And I'm not saying I've got any intimate knowledge of it, but, you get the feeling about it. One other thing, Andy, before you go here. During the year, and Bob Harrig was a guest on one of our earlier shows, ripping bloke, great guy from ESPN, got a great sense of global golf. And he was involved in a conversation about the US PGA Championship being called the PGA Championship on Twitter with a few other people. And he was saying that's its name. It's the PGA Championship. And we all say it's the US PGA because it is the US PGA. And he was actually actively involved in saying why it should just be the PGA Championship, which I think is a really hard position to defend. Especially it's after the Australian PGA Championship. It's after the Canadian PGA Championship. It's not even remotely the first. Like the US Open is behind the British Open only, and then I think it goes South Africa, Canada, Australia in quick order. But the US PGA Championship, I'm on semantics here, but the US PGA Championship is the 3rd or 4th different PGA Championship to get started. It has not got some God-given title to the PGA Championship, but this is the attitude we're confronting here, even from learned people. And it just does my head in. I'm sure you can sense my angst over the microphone.
I like it.
Tell me, Hayesy, about Mark Leishman, because we're very happy that he's coming to play the Australian PGA.
It's great.
Royal Pines, end of the month. He's had a great year. That's a great get for them. The release says that that's exclusive, so I'm presuming from that, Hayesy, that he's not going to come and play the Open at Royal Sydney.
Okay, so we're recording...
the Australian.
We're recording this, Thursday morning, and I haven't had a chance to discuss that with anyone in our office, but the word exclusively tends to suggest that he's not playing the Australian Open. I understand that talks are still underway.
They obviously wanted him to play.
Yeah, and I think those talks are still ongoing as far as I'm aware. So we're hopeful that he'll play, which would render that word incorrect. But, first and foremost, I'm really glad he's playing. He is the draw card, arguably, of the Australian golfing year, and he's about $1 favourite to win the Greg Norman medal, I would imagine.
He'd have to win that.
Yeah, and which is one of the reasons he's in the Gold Coast, which is also fantastic. Tick, tick, tick for everyone involved. I really hope that money isn't a factor in discussions around the Australian Open. If there's another reason, that's fine, but he's obviously in the country at some point nearby there, so I hope he plays. He's a great bloke, Mark Leishman. I love him like a brother, but it's another case in point. So we hope that he plays, and I understand if he can't for personal or family reasons, that's obviously the priority, but as we speak, it does sound like it's PGA only.
Yep.
So just getting back before we get away from it, the appearance fee issue. Do players hide behind? Are they comfortable hiding behind managers on this one, or do managers get that far out in front of players that when tours around the world are looking to attract a player, that the player may not even know about it because the agent's just saying it's this or don't bother?
I think column B. So I think the latter of the two alternatives you suggested. The big problem, Andy, lies in the fact. I'll use a different country so we don't get confused.
Yep.
So if Greg Turner is to play the New Zealand Open and he's being offered $50,000 to play the New Zealand Open, then Michael Hendry will go, "What the hell? I haven't been offered any money. I'm not going to play unless I get $80,000. I've done stuff since Greg Turner was, anything relevant."
Yeah.
Phil Tataranga goes, "You kidding? He's getting $50,000. I've done as many things as he has. I want $100,000." Danny Lee, you go, "You guys kidding? I've been on the President's Cup. I want $300,000," and the bidding war goes up. If we had in Australia and obviously New Zealand a rule, perhaps that we need to work to, no appearance fees for Australian players. I think that's maybe you get airfares and accommodation. I don't know what it is, but we need a bar set so that there's no comparison. If we need to pay Jordan Spieth or Sergio Garcia to come to Australia, so be it. We've got to make them track around the world for a title that they really couldn't care about. But within reason, I'm saying that. But the Australian.
I know. Just so we're clear on that, I know exactly what you mean by that. That title is very important to everybody who's having this conversation and involved in Australian golf. But to an international player who's particularly one that might be born in the United States of America, now, sort of post 1980, they don't. Winning the Australian Open isn't what it was to Jack Nicklaus.
No, absolutely not. No. And this is the key. So if you've ever played a chook run at Wanneroo Golf Club, or ever gone out for a surf and turf at the Indooroopilly Golf Club, you're playing the Australian Open for free, knackers. Yeah. I don't care. That needs to be our position.
We've been down this track, Andy, about 10 years ago. I can remember when the old AGU at about 2003, 4, somewhere around there, the Australian players weren't getting appearance money at that point, at least the ones that weren't Greg Norman probably.
Yep.
So they got upset because the AGU were paying sort of low-level overseas players, whoever they could get their hands on, and they were giving appearance money to them. So the Robert Allenbys and the Stuart Applebys, who were playing on the US Tour and winning tournaments, they started to get angry about that. So at one point they had a rule that you had to pay appearance money. It had to be someone who'd won a major, I think. But I don't believe that that's the case now. It's just kind of market rules as things stand at the moment.
I can understand that. I can understand, the two, Appleby, Allenby, insert other names. I can understand them looking at what promoters in Australia are doing to get a second or third tier European player down here, just because he, might have finished top 10 in a, whatever, some European Tour event, maybe was the 12th player on a Ryder Cup team, mate, whatever, I can understand them thinking, well, hang on, if there's money around, QED, I've done more than him, so I can understand that. But it's the death of the local tour.
You could not have said that better, Andy.
It can't work.
And
we
the
can't
problem is
that down here.
with let's just go through the immediate, still present, but let's say past, in inverted commas again, generation of Allenby, Appleby, Sendon, Pampling, Ogilvy, all those guys in that magnificent era. if they all get, by definition, $100,000 because that's their scale, there's 10 lots of $100,000 that would otherwise potentially be on top of the prize pool, which would make the tournament a $2.5 million tournament, would suddenly get the European second-tier players going, I want to come down there because it's actually worthwhile coming, and I'll get to play on a good course in a better city than the European Tour alternative on the week. I mean, it just, we need to get fair income as a golfing country and a community.
Bit of meat on the bone of that one. There's a lot to think about and discuss.
Andy.
I like it, Hayesy, when you're like this. You're in very good form. We've got a very special guest who's about to join us as we continue our road to the Open Series. I reckon he might have a thought on a bit of this stuff as well.
The Golf Australia website is now the place to go to look up your handicap and so much more. Whether you're out and about on your phone or in the office trying to avoid work, just go to golf.org.au and punch your golf link number into the box at the top of the homepage. Who knows, maybe that last round was just good enough to put you in single figures. While you're on the site, check out the daily golf results at your club, view our course index for up-to-date ratings, read the latest golf news from home and abroad, listen to Australian golf podcasts and interviews, and watch video tournament highlights or tips to improve your game. It's everything a golf tragic could want. Visit golf.org.au today, the home of Australian golf.
Peter Senior here. Really enjoy listening inside the ropes. Guys have always got something very interesting to talk about. Hope you enjoyed the program.
Time to continue our road to the Open Series, and this man could have won several. He could have won several around the time that he won his Australian Open in 1979 at Metropolitan. He was a huge figure in Australian golf here and internationally, and one of the great contributors to the game since he's finished playing. Of course, we speak of Jack Newton, and he joins us on Inside the Ropes. Jack, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks. It's great to be with you guys.
Just before we get going on your memories from 79 and a couple of other near misses and some of the great players that you were competing against, down here for a national open, we've just been having a pretty spirited conversation about, where the tour sits now down here and the legitimacy of, kind of appearance money for, local players, Australian players, particularly to play in our Australian majors, if you like. Have you got a view, a sort of broad, sweep view on that, Jack?
I think the first thing to recognise is the fact that golf's in the doldrums in this country and everywhere else the game's flying. So I just can't put my finger on, I think there's a lack of, certainly the media coverage of some of the golfers we've got playing around the world. And there doesn't seem to be any interest in that from the journalist's point of view. And I think that's having a knock-on effect right down the line where our prize money is not up to scratch where it should be. And, of course, then we get back to your issue of appearance money. And I think that really depends on the type of player and what they've done and everything like that. But I would have thought that most Australians would entertain the idea of playing in their home country without asking for an appearance fee. I just don't know why people like Jason Day haven't been here in the last 3 or 4 years when, he's one of the world's best, has been number one. Now, someone like him, you'd probably pay him if he's a world number one. In my day, of course, Greg got all the money. And Peter Senior, who I thought at that time was as good as Greg. I think he won 7 times or 8 times, and Greg won about 6 or 7. So, those are sort of issues that get involved with locals who got their hand out for appearance money.
There's so much there in the answer to that question. Is there a solution? The global calendar, Jack, is, better than us, is so tightly held now. And, the American creep just continues into, 49 of the 52 weeks now. Have we got any hope, do you think? We're all positive and we love it around here and we want to talk it up. But can you see a way of us kind of getting our local tour off the mat?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there with American creep. I just went over to the Junior President's Cup to see how they ran it. It was the first time that it had been done. It was in New Jersey. And as you know, junior golf in this country is under 18. You get over there and the Yanks have got 4 Americans in there who are 19. So they just changed the rule as they go along, the bastards. You know?
They all pulled up in their cars, did they, with their beards?
Yeah. Well, what they do is over there, if they decide to go to college outside of high school, they get an extra year. Now, I tried to bring in under 19 here because I know what the kids are going through during their HSC year when they're, 18 or just about to turn 18. And I have kids coming to me all the time at events saying, "Oh, Jack, this HSC is doing my head in, and it makes it difficult to play decent golf." So I thought under 19 would have been a good way to go, because what happens with a lot of the kids that come through my foundation or play in my events, or our events, I should say, basically, under 19 wouldn't be a bad move. I changed it at one stage, and then I got ordered by Golf Australia to change it back. But I feel like what happens is they come through the junior programs that we do, and suddenly they turn 18 and they're out during their HSC year, and they go, "Well, what do I do now? I'm in the wilderness." And that's basically what happens. When I was a young bloke, junior golf was under 21, and then they made it under 18. But not all the countries are sticking to that. That's the point.
I'm employed by GA these days, Jack, but I'm interested to hear what they said to you, like what's the reasoning behind no under 19s?
Who, Golf Australia or the Yanks?
No, golf. Well, clearly the Yanks haven't got any rules; they just make them up. But
they just make them up as they go along,
But there's a lot of logic behind your reasoning there, and your Jack Newton Golf Foundation and tour is thriving. So you're at the coalface. You see a lot of these kids, and I'd be interested to know the reasoning behind GA's verdict there.
Yeah, well, it's I think what happens is probably we spoil them a bit, and then they suddenly turn 18 halfway through the year. Or, I had one of our boys that was playing for the rest of the world team against the Americans over there. He was trying to do his HSC while he was there playing against the Yanks. I mean, it was. And he played terrible, which is not his go. But, that's the situation as it is. But I think if the Americans are going to do that, I think we've got to go the same way so that we're on a level footing across the board.
So fight fire with fire, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the girls would get some benefit out of that as well, because, although we've got some fantastic young girls at the moment who you're going to hear about in the future. One of the girls, for example, she's 14 and she shot 8 under par at Cessnock. Of course, I'm building. Wow. 8 under par when you're 14.
What's her name, Jack?
Her name is Sophie Yip.
Righto. We'll put that one in the black book.
Bit of an unfortunate surname for a golfer, but it doesn't deter her, I can guarantee you that.
Jack, you've gone straight to your Junior Golf Foundation, which is one of it would be the biggest in Australia outside of, I guess, what Golf Australia or the States do, but it means a lot to you, doesn't it? It was kind of almost forced upon you, I guess, because at 33 you had the accident that everyone knows about with the propeller on the Cessna at Sydney Airport, and you couldn't play at a pro level anymore, and you kind of moved into that, didn't you? And you sort of went into it with as much passion as you did into your pro golf.
Well, actually, I started funding a tournament at Cessnock, where I was born, in 1979, and
so you're already onto it.
We were already doing something there, and then it grew and grew and grew, and then we got to sort of the mid-'80s, and I said to John Lennertson, who was my off-sider up there, I said, listen, I think we need to expand this and invite, my suggestion to each state was you send one kid who's never travelled much, younger, and an older kid who's had a bit more experience in both the boys and the girls. And all the states came back to us. We paid for accommodation, etc. And that's how we sort of kicked off. And then I launched the Junior Golf Foundation in 1986. So I was already on that track because I felt like, compared to when I came through, didn't seem to be a whole lot going on for the juniors, and pretty much all that was available, quite frankly, was to get in the interstate team, to go and play somewhere against the rest of the country. So it's something I am passionate about. I always have been passionate about, and I think the powers that be in both state and national level, it was a form of the game that was being totally unrecognised. And when you boil it all down, it's actually the future of the game. And, so I've had some ding-dongs with various people about this issue, and now they've all sort of caved in and said, yeah, he's right. So,
I reckon you could be pretty influential when you put your mind to it, Jack, somehow.
Oh, I'm a bit of a determined bastard, as you probably know.
You mentioned 1970. Look, your work. We should just mention. Most people listening will know this, but your work beyond what you did with a golf club in your own hand, but your work, encouraging and developing youth was very much at the heart of you receiving your OAM, and that has been recognised by people who do care about this sort of stuff. So, it hasn't gone completely unnoticed by those, the powers that be. You mentioned 79 on the way through, and I think we'll get back to a lot of this other stuff, but we are here to remember, you're winning your Australian Open, which was in 1979 at Metro. And you just look at the top four that year: Newton, Marsh, Norman, Shearer, and then the rest of the field I'm sure the boys will talk to you about. We like to think that we're on the verge of a bit of a goal, or living, in the early stages of a bit of a golden era right now, Jack. But gee, it was a tough school back in those days, wasn't it? I mean, to win a tournament here, it was pretty deep. I mean, the top end of the deep end of the pool in Australian golf then had a lot of people swimming in it.
Yeah, well, I think when I won the Australian Open in 79, I don't think we had an Australian win the Australian Open, because it was the era of Nicklaus and Player, and you can throw Palmer in there on occasions as well. So it was very difficult to win an Australian Open against, what would have been, the big three, quite frankly. And I think that it was a bit of a breakthrough for Australian golf. And then Bob Shearer won in, I think it was 82 or something like that.
Yeah.
He basically condoned that, and but it was a tough gig to win on usually tough golf courses against hot opposition from overseas. But we had to get used to that, and when I played in America, I feel like, I played in one of the best eras. The list was never ending, from Ray Floyd to Jack Nicklaus to Arnold Palmer to Gary Player to, you can just go on with guys who really were good players, and you had to be on song with your game, otherwise you'd be an also-ran.
You forgot one on the way through there who you played a 18-hole Open Championship playoff against as well on the way through. There were so many, weren't there?
Yeah, I mean, that was a bit of a funny one. Just going back to the Australian Open, in the last round I played with Gary Player and Graham Marsh, and I got a bit raggedy, towards the back end of the final round. And I had a bit of trouble on that short par 4 dogleg right. I hit it in the bunker off the tee, played a pretty good shot, and it ran into the bunker left. and I got in there, and it was straight downhill to the hole, and it was quick and firm, and I played probably one of the best bunker shots I've ever played in my life under the pump, and I just had to get it just out to have any hope of stopping it. And of course, Player was then regarded as one of the best bunker players in the game because Norman von Nyder had worked on his bunker play, and he was the best at bunker play. Anyway, I hit this shot, and it just got out, and it ran down to a foot from the hole. And Gary Player said that was unbelievable, Jack. And for him to say that, it was a bit of a nice thank you. And then I wobbled in and beat the Marsh. Although Greg had a chance to tie playing 18, and he hit it about 30 feet short and right, which had a big right to left swing on it, and he hit it 4-foot past and missed it coming back. So that meant I won. So that was nice, but I won the Buick Open in America, and then the British Open. Well, I don't know. I've obviously had some nightmares over that because I should have won in the last round.
I think you had a putt on 18 to win, didn't you? Maybe 10, 12 feet. Just looking.
Oh, that was in the playoff. But,
all right, okay.
In the actual final round, I was playing with a South African guy, and I was probably 2 in front, I reckon, playing 16, which was a long par 3. In those days, could be a 3-wood or even a driver with a real narrow green, and I got to the tee, and there was 4 groups waiting there to hit off. And when you get to that stage in a tournament, you really want to keep going. You want to keep the momentum going, and so I had to sit there and basically watch these blokes from Ray Floyd to Palmer to Johnny Miller to Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, and of course Tom Watson, all playing in front of me, because I played with Nicklaus in the 3rd round and I broke the course record and shot 65, and Jack said to me, who was very good to me, by the way, when I went to America, I'd always spoken with him when he came to Australia, and because I was playing in Europe in those early days, and he was fantastic. I think he's, an icon of the game, obviously, from his playing ability, but I think he's an icon for the way he carried himself and the way he handled the media and the public. And he said, Jack, although I had 69, I felt like I was taking 79 watching you shoot 65 today. So that was a nice wrap. And then, of course, following on from that, when I went to America to play at Augusta for the first time, I asked him what ball was the right one to use in America, and he gave me 2 boxes of his golf balls that he got from the company that he was playing under at the time. And I played with Weisskopf in a practice round the next day, and as soon as I hit my ball onto the first green, he walked up and picked the ball up and said, "Where'd you get that from?" And I said, "Jack gave me." He said, I represent the same bloody company and I can't get it.
Now, you mentioned Augusta, Jack, and look, in the year that you won the Australian Open, Seve Ballesteros was in the field, and you were quite good friends with Seve, I understand. But in 1980 at Augusta, you finished runner-up to Seve. In the last round, I think he got something like 10 shots ahead at one point, and then he had a bit of a wobble at Amen Corner, and you nearly caught him. And I've heard you say before that there was a bit of Spanish invective coming out of his mouth at one stage. Maybe at the 12th or 11th, he found a bit of water. I mean, you ended up running second to Seve, which is a nice thing. I mean, I know you'd like to win, but it's a nice thing to have on your CV.
Yeah, well, he was when he first came out on the European tour, he was only 16 or 17, and he used to come to me and ask me to watch him hit balls or play a practice round with him, and I got on really well with him. He was a great kid and a wonderful player. A short game that was just incredible. And but just going back to that, I was at the same point. He taught me a lot of Spanish swear words.
I think I read in an article that he said someone asked him what he said, and he said, "I said son of a bitch."
No, he said more than that.
Oh, did he?
But he was just on fire, and when we turned to go to the back nine, he was 9 in front of me, and he bogeyed 10, hit it in the water on 11, hit it in the water on 12 and 13.
Oh,
so all of a sudden, standing on the 14th tee, he was only 2 in front, and all the way through from the 10th to the 14th tee, all sorts of expletives coming out of his mouth, and I knew more because he taught me. And he gets on the 14th tee, and he hooks it into the pine trees on the left. And now, normally with pine trees, the golf ball will drop straight down. But in this case, it hit the tree and went way left out into the left-hand rough off the 15th tee, the par 5, down the hill. Now he's got to hit it over the top of those pine trees and at a very narrow target, and he played just an incredible shot. Got it just off the back left of the green, and of course his short game was, at that time, probably the best in the game, I'd say, and he chipped it down to about 8 feet and holed it for par. So I thought on the next hole, the par 5, I'd need to make eagle to catch him, and hit a good drive. I had, I think, a 4-iron to the green, and I hit it to about 20 feet right of the hole. He put his on the green, but he was on the bottom side coming up the hill. I was coming down the hill. Anyway, my putt caught the right edge of the hole and spun it out, and went about 6 foot past. So I missed it coming back, and that was the end of the ball game, basically. But it was a pretty interesting back nine, I must say.
It sounds like it. Hey, Jack, going back to 79 here, and just looking at the other players that you left in your wake. David Graham was tied 9th that year. We were lucky enough to have a really good chat with him a few weeks ago in this segment on this podcast. And we all walk away as lovers of the game and, cognizant of what, David's done with his career and just where he should sit, believing that he's probably underrated by the local, when I say local, the Australian sports community at large. Do you share that view, that we don't recognise just how great he was?
Oh, look, he was a very good player, there's no doubt about it, but I don't think he helped himself with his attitude to the general public in general. And I think that probably negated, what he'd achieved in golf. From where he started out in Tasmania playing left-handed, and then switched over to right-handed. And look, I've seen the guy shoot 65 and go and re-grip his putter or change something, and you'd think, oh, I wouldn't do that in a fit. I continue to use the gear that I use today to shoot low numbers. And look, he was a bit of a different bloke, per se, and maybe that had a bit of a negative effect on his, love from the community.
Just wasn't as warm and as engaging? Is that what you...
No, that's probably the better description. Yeah, you're right.
What about Greg, Jack? You my understanding was that when he first came out, you were pretty close with him. And I read an article or an interview you did with John Huggan, the Scottish golf writer, and you said that you thought that the money sort of got to him. You kind of witnessed this happen where you even described a moment where you went upstairs at a bar and there were a whole bunch of women. Someone had set up some women to come up there and someone was snapping photos, someone paparazzi type situation. You felt like the money and fame had sort of changed him a bit, and you ended up not as being as close to him, did you?
No, but let's go back a sec. I was fronted by a guy in Europe who wanted to manage me, and he explained the scenario, and I went back and discussed it with Jackie and my wife, and she said, well, I said, look, this guy could make me a lot of money, but I'm not too sure about him. And she said, well, don't do it. And so I rang him up 2 weeks later and went and had a meeting with him, and I said, look, I'm not going to take up your offer for a number of reasons, which I won't go into. And he said, well, I want to manage an Australian. And I said, well, if you want to manage an Australian, there's a young guy called Greg Norman who just won a tournament in Adelaide, and he's got plenty of ability. And he said, all right, who's that? I said, oh, Greg Norman. And so the next thing I know, he's having meetings with Norman about it. But what he said to me, he would have said to Greg. And what he said was, you have to ditch all your friends and become a loner. That's how you make the big dough. And that was something that I couldn't entertain. So the next thing I know, he's sponsoring Greg. And typically of what he had said to me, Greg brushed all the blokes that had helped him on the way up, and who were all his mates as well, and da-da-da-da-da. And so there was a bit of talk in the camp about why he was doing that. And so I fronted him, and I said, look, mate, look, I know the bloke, because, you know, he'd asked me about managing me, and to become a loner and ditch all your friends doesn't seem right to me. Does it seem right to you? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, there's the Stuart Jens and the Brian Joneses and Mike Ferguson's and myself, and I said, we all regarded ourselves as mates. And then the first year he was in Europe, he travelled with me, and I tried to point out where to stay and all the rest of it. Anyway, after a while, he settled down, and he was angry at first, which is typical. I said, look, I think you've got to change your plan there. I think you've got to at least support your mates. So he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, why don't we organise to have lunch or something, all of us. Said, yeah, righto. So he was staying in Packers Joint in the city. So we drove from Castle Hill to his favourite restaurant. It was one of mine too, I must say. And we walk in there, and there's a bloke from IMG there. And Brian Jones is about 4 foot tall, cheeky little bastard too. And he goes, hey, what are you doing here, mate? Off you go, piss off. And I thought, oh, geez, he's going to be a blue here straight off. Anyway, the bloke humbled his way out the door, and so off we went for lunch. And after we had quite a long lunch, and everything was good amongst everybody, and Greg played the game pretty well, we went to joint opposite the boulevard. There's a little alleyway running down there, and we decided we were going to go into this club for a few drinks before we went home. And so we get to the front door, and believe it or not, there was a girl from Newcastle that I knew who was there, and she said, how you going, Jack, blah, blah. And, yeah, good. And so I said, we're going upstairs. So we went upstairs, and it was one of those rooms where they had, like, big cement pillars. And we were just having a good laugh and telling jokes and a few drinks. And the next thing, this bloke jumps out from behind one of the pillars after these 4 or 5 birds suddenly appeared out of the blue, as if we were with him, you know, and took the photo. Oh. Well, Greg did his nana and went over and said, mate, you give me that film or I'm going to smash your camera. And sure enough, he gave him the film. Anyway, when we were leaving, because after that, the whole thing ended up in a bit of a nightmare, really, particularly from his point of view. And then you start feeling sorry for him because everybody knows he is. And da-da-da. go downstairs, and the girl who was on the door, she attempts to kiss him. And there was a bloke in the alleyway who took a photo of that. And, well, Greg chased him down the alleyway and smashed his camera. So that's the sort of thing he had to put up with in this country.
So I think in the interview that I read, in which you told that story, you said that he ended up not being able to trust people.
Yeah,
that's what you felt.
With the insight into the manager who wanted him to be a loner, and then that sort of thing goes on a bit. Well, I agree. That's probably what did make him not trust people. But surely he can trust his mates. He's known them for bloody years, and I just felt like he was going down the wrong track. And I said the same thing to him about press. I said, Greg, you've got to stop walking into the press room and just blurting out the first thing that comes into your head because they're going to clean you. And he said, well, I'm asking for the truth. I said, well, you've got to go in and make sure you leave yourself where some journalists will twist and turn the story and it comes out totally different to what you said. So, I tried to tell him that, but he continued to go in and be an expert on everything from grasses to the best politician in the world.
We're not sure about his... Some of us, just for what it's worth, Jack, around this table right now, aren't quite sure of the soundness of his political judgment, but that's for him to live with, and half the American population probably agree with him, and the rest of us don't. So, look, it's been a joy. We've got to let you go because we're going to get a wriggle on and get out of here. But thanks for being part of the show. We probably spent more time talking about other stuff. In fact, we surely did than the 79 Australian Open that you won. But it's surely reminded a few people who were old enough like us to remember you doing it, how outstanding an achievement that was, and thoroughly deserved by a player who represented this country so well.
I had a great year that year. I won the New South Wales Open prior to the Australian Open, and the New South Wales Open then was probably the second biggest one after the Australian Open. Price it was, and so it was a good year.
Thanks for joining us on the show, Jack. Great to hear.
See you, Jack. Thanks.
Take care, boys.
Jack Newton joining us on Inside the Ropes.
Hi, this is Sherelle McMahon. Swing Fit is the fun, healthy, social way for women to get started in golf. You'll learn the basics of the golf swing and how to putt over a 6-week program, and get your whole body moving through yoga and Pilates-style exercises. You don't need any golf knowledge or equipment. Simply turn up in comfy clothing and get started. You'll be surrounded by like-minded people and receive constant support. So get outdoors, meet new friends, and learn a sport that you can play for the rest of your life. To find a program near you, visit swingfit.com.au.
Hi, my name is Torian Yu, who play on the LPGA Tour, and I love Vegemite, but I love Pedro more than Vegemite.
Welcome back to the show. There's obviously a lot of other bits and pieces that we've got to get stuck into, but I reckon Jack Newton was in for the long. We could have spent another hour with Jack. I don't reckon he was going to miss anyone today. If we had have bowled him up, he was going to knock him over the fence.
I think we just scraped the surface there. We didn't even actually get to mention his television commentary career. He was an outstanding television commentary and media person because he spoke so openly and his knowledge of the game was so good. He actually got taken off the air at the BBC at one stage because he was perceived to have insulted, I think it's Alex Hay, is it, a Scottish commentator? So next thing he wasn't working there anymore.
I reckon there would have been the perception of Jack Newton that he would have upset and insulted a lot of people along the way, and he would have just been calling it as he saw it.
Yeah. I'll ask you to get him back. He's actually really busy because of all his commitments with the junior golf. He's just a passionate bloke. I love him for it. You know, he's got Australian golf at the forefront of his mind and right in his heart. A lot of other bits and pieces we need to get to before we wind it up today, but there's a great story, Hayesy, that you've brought to our attention out of the famous Oatlands Golf Club. Tell us about it. Well, this is one of the stories that really warms our hearts, Andy. And this is what ultimately golf is all about. And we're lucky to have John Bolster join us on the phone now. We'll get into the nuts and bolts of it. But, John, welcome along. You've got a very special story to tell us about the Long Markers Club Championship at the Oatlands Golf Club.
Yes, I have, Roger. Well, I'm 83 years of age, and I love my golf. And at 83, I love match play. And I decided this year that I'd have another go at the match play. At 83, you don't get many opportunities. As it turned out, in the second round, I was drawn to play against this lovely little kid, 9 years of age.
Wow.
And he stands up. He comes up to about my waist.
Christian Rees is his name.
Christian, yes. Yeah. He's a lovely kid. And he's a very talented golfer. He's got a beautiful swing for a 9-year-old. He's going to beat goods. He really is. His dad is a very good golfer. And I'm involved with the juniors at Oatlands. I'd like to promote them as much as I possibly can. And this has been great. I think it's good for the kids. They love this sort of thing, and it's good for the club. But golf is a game, as I've said once before, that it's a game where how many other games can you play? Can an 83-year-old compete against a 9-year-old?
There's a 74-year gap between the competitors. That's unbelievable.
Don't keep reminding me.
That's extraordinary.
Now, with the 74-year gap, and you're on the wrong side of that, I guess we'd have to say, do you get a bit nervous when you're teeing it up, you stand on the first tee and you're playing against the guy 74 years younger?
I couldn't even see him. I thought I was going to.
Did you have a laugh about it with him?
Oh yes. No, he's not. He wasn't a kid who was laughing much. He's very serious little boy.
Okay.
Oh yeah, my very word. You know, he wanted to play his golf, and that was that. You know. And as for conceding putts, very rarely did he ever concede to
He had to get it within 6 inches, didn't
Well, yes, his father was caddying, and he'd say to him, give it a John, give it a John. Anyhow.
Did you try and explain the finer points of match play to him?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, right.
Look, he's an intelligent little kid. He played a match on on Sunday. Our match was on the Saturday, and he played one of these intercompany matches, club matches, and he won his event 7-6. So he's really talented. He's a really talented kid.
So you pushed him around a bit for your victory then?
Oh, I did. Yeah, somebody said that was a good thing for him, but he got all cranky on the next day and annihilated this other poor little kid.
John, tell us a bit about Oatlands in Western Sydney. I believe it's the home club of Peter Lonard.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
What sort of course is it?
Peter Lonard was the pro there when I happened to be president, actually. So I knew Peter pretty well.
He's a great man, Peter Lonard.
It's what I call a great members club. It's not a championship golf course by any means, but it's not easy either. It's very difficult. The greens are renowned amongst the top amateur golfers. They all know that when they get to Oatlands, they're going to have trouble on the greens. They're very fast greens. And look, it's a great course. I've been there for 42 years, so that's that.
So, John, I'm just doing some quick maths in my head, but do you think Christian's got any concept of what 1934 is?
I wouldn't think so. I really wouldn't think so. No. No. Would you think they would? Well, how about you? Have you got any concept of what 1934 is?
I'm just struggling to answer that with a straight face.
Yeah, let that one go to the keeper, mate.
Hey, John, one question I'd love to ask you, given the fact that you've been so committed to the game and you've been on the committee there at Oatlands before as president, and I imagine in other roles as well, do you think that by and large golf clubs are doing enough to welcome new players in, particularly younger players?
Yeah, look, it's a vexing question, that, and golf is really going through a very hard time. I think it's a matter of economics as much as anything. We at Oatlands have got a good membership, but it rolls over very quickly, annually. We have a program going where you introduce players at a reasonable cost to them, which means that actually the first year or two they pay very little, but after that, reality sets in, and I think wives and small children, and you lose those kids then, you lose those young men. And it's not a game that a lot of people can afford to play either.
Yeah,
many of the clubs around Sydney are $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a year.
It's definitely, there's a couple of issues in there that are clubs all over the place, not only New South Wales, are grappling with. You knocked over the young fella in the quarterfinal, I think. Am I right in saying that?
That's correct.
How'd you go in the semi-final?
That's on Saturday next.
And how old's the bloke you're playing that week?
This is what I call the sublime to the ridiculous. This little fellow of 9 years of age who weighs I don't know what, not too many Ks, and I'm sure my opponent, they won't mind me saying this, but he weighs about 28 stone.
Oh wow.
I've gone from the sublime to the ridiculous, haven't I?
Well, you won't be crushing that bloke on the first tee, that's for sure.
Can't even get in the same cart as him.
Right.
He's a lovely boy. He's a lovely fella. Lovely fella.
Good luck. It's an amazing, it's a remarkable story, and we're delighted to have had you tell us a bit about it on the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's good, and thanks. I thank all the members of Oatlands Golf Club, and I want everyone who plays golf, please enjoy it. And look after the young kids. They're lovely, these kids, and just look after them.
That's a really good message. John, good luck on the weekend. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much indeed.
G'day, I'm My Golf Ambassador Jason Day. I'm really excited to be an ambassador for My Golf, Australian Golf's national junior program, jointly run by Golf Australia and the PGA. My Golf is every Aussie kid's first step on their golfing pathway. It's all about teaching children the basic skills of golf in a safe and healthy environment, and just as importantly, about the life skills that golf can teach you that distinguish our sport from the rest. Remember to visit mygolf.org.au for more information.
G'day, this is David Graham, and you are Inside the Ropes.
That is a great yarn for anyone. But anyone who's got any of these stories out there, there's a million of them around these clubs. Go on to Twitter at Inside the Ropes. What's the Twitter handle?
Inside the underscore
Inside the underscore ropes. And let us know about them, because we want them. We want them.
Here, and just further to the point he's made before we get on to the last couple of bits and pieces, in terms of golf clubs making themselves more accessible to the changing demographic and the changing type of player. I was talking to a club member this week whose club is being developed at the moment. They're doing some renovations. And he's late 30s, got a young family, time poor, wants to play more golf. And put a proposal to this golf club suggesting that maybe they should think about, as well as having the bridge room and the bars and the this and the that, maybe they should think about having, and it's a big club, a lot of money, maybe they should think about having a kids area, so that if the father wanted to come along and play his golf on his Saturday, and he could bring the kid along, and there are other young fathers, thinking the same thing, but they wanted to bring their kids along, they could, not necessarily a pure creche per se, but have a kids area where a nanny could come along, or somebody to look after the kids for the 4 hours while you're playing your game of golf. You go out and play. The kids have a great time face painting and doing some arts and crafts in a special part of the golf club. Everybody's a winner. The mum has the morning off. She can go and hang out, have a cup of coffee, or she can go and play golf herself, whatever she wants to do. And everyone's a winner, and the family comes back together. Look, I'll meet you afternoon. We'll pick the kids up. We'll have lunch. We'll go home, do whatever. Club, the bloke reckons the club gave it zero consideration.
Wow.
It was thrown out before it was even... And to my way of thinking, if you want to keep that type of player, and we're sort of not too far, we're sort of in that demographic. If you want to keep that player active, engaged, involved in your golf club, that's what you need to be doing, that sort of stuff. Surely that's the challenge.
I learnt golf at the Noosa Golf Club, Andy, when I was 7 or 8, and they had a 5-hole competition as a starting point once you got good enough to actually get on the course. Then a 9-hole competition. It was played opposite the normal 18-hole Saturday afternoon competition, and there were 5-cent raspberries back in the clubhouse that you could go and have. And that club spawned officers, Tickles, Bowditches, Rostrins, all these great Australian players come out of that little community where kids are welcomed into the club. I couldn't agree with you more.
It's a shock, Hayesy, to hear you talk about attracting people to golf, and it had to include food in that conversation. Terrible shock.
Oh, that's a cheapie. I'll have to wear that.
Hey,
that is a cheapie.
Evan Priest, who is the golf writer for AAP in the States and also does some work for Golf Digest here in Australia, did a fan around all the top Australian pros a couple of weeks ago, and it was published in the Golf Digest just recently, and he asked all our top pros what they thought were the best ideas for bringing young people back to golf. And one of the things that came through from Jeff Ogilvy, Adam Scott, Jason Day, etc., was par 3 courses.
Of course.
Par 3 courses where kids can just go out and play. And are there any here? I'm not sure.
Studley Park, there's one there, but as Clates was talking about this a couple of weeks ago, it's kind of not even really a go. It's like a park with
Why don't people start opening par 3 courses?
Well, the Dunes has got the cup course.
Bowen Heads has got one here in Victoria as well.
It's not a par 3 course. It's a proper little golf course.
That's right,
But it's generous and it's not impossible to play. And, this should. I agree with you.
Pretty simple idea.
Yep.
But just from John, like the bottom line there is game for life.
Yeah.
Get involved and you can play until till the day you can't swing a club.
Speaking of golf journos, Blakey, just in general business before we wrap it up, Jeff Shackelford, who's been on this show on occasions, has been locked. It's been a cross-Pacific ding-dong
stoush.
It has been this week. Jeff Shackelford taking on one front Mark Allen and on the other front Lucas Herbert. Have we been following that on Twitter this week?
I did a little bit, Hayesy a little bit more so than me, but for those that don't know about this, Jeff Shackelford's been on a one-man campaign recently about backstopping in pro golf, where you hit your ball close to the flag, and rather than getting up onto the green and marking it, leave it there, which the other player can then possibly use it as a bit of a backstop. So he thinks there's a bit of a conspiracy theory. Lucas Herbert, Hayesy, who's obviously a young Victorian pro, thinks that it's more about pace of play.
Yeah, and paraphrasing his response to Shaq's ongoing argument was, the pros are criticised about pace of play, pros do something about it, pros get criticised about cheating. So that was the upshot of the conversation. Went on and on and on, and there were some other great thoughts there from Lucas. Is free thinker and speaks his mind, which he really is. He's a great character, and to be followed on Twitter at LH Golf 5. But
he's not bad.
Look, Shaq had a bit more of I'd say that one was a bit more heartfelt and warm than the one he had with Marco, Andy. It was got a bit heated.
It did. And Marco was very much, give me a spell. I mean, we can't win. We can't win. We're lambs to the slaughter with you blokes, no matter what issue you want to pick us up on. Look, we'll all have our views on this. There's the standard that you walk past is the standard you accept. And I see both sides of this debate. This will not be a real issue until it's an issue. It'll happen one day. It'll happen one day. And it'll have a significant
so a
impact.
pro's going to hit out of a bunker.
Well,
it'll hit the other ball. And
it nearly happened in China. The reason it was sharp this week was because of the HSBC champions, and Stenson left his ball behind the hole. Koepka's one shot behind Johnson, who's unravelling. Johnson's got a bunker shot front left. Now, he could have easily half-skinnied that bunker shot past the hole. It's 1,000 to 1. It's 1,000 to 1 that it's going to happen. But if it does happen and it stops Johnson's ball, Stenson gets to replace his. Koepka's on the back of the green watching it unfold going, if it happens, he goes, well, hang on, that ball's going to go 40 feet past the hole. Instead, you're getting a drop. Yeah. Your ball's come to a standstill 6 feet past the hole. I'm locked in a battle with you. Justin Rose is further ahead and ends up winning the top. So, look, it isn't an issue until it happens. And you watch when it happens, and it will happen one of these days. Absolutely London to a brick, it will. And you watch the game blow up when it does. Someone will... I think there'll be a reaction to it.
So Justin Rose, good segue. He was 8 back in that tournament in Shanghai. He was 8 back at one point of the final day, and thanks to Dustin Johnson's meltdown. I don't know whether it was a total meltdown. I mean, he never had any worse than bogey all day. Right, he just did not make a putt all day, so he ends up shooting 77. And I think you tweeted during the week that they had to mention the Greg Norman Augusta story because he led by 6 through 3 rounds, and I believe that's only the second or third time in a US Tour event, including the Masters 96 Greg Norman, where a player's led by 6 and lost. Or sorry, a world number one player has led by 6 and lost. So that was pretty amazing, Hayesy.
It was amazing, and a 10-shot swing +5 for his round, -5 for Justin Rose. That's you'd watch a lot of golf until you see that happen again.
Is there a more gut-wrenching experience for a sports fan to watch a good player unravel in a golf tournament like that?
It's a train wreck in slow motion.
It's hard to watch, isn't it?
Yeah, it's if you see someone play an ambitious shot in cricket, it happens like that and it's done. But in golf, it can drag on for 2.5 hours.
And it's written all over
you can see it.
You could see it on Johnson's face, couldn't you? He was more animated than you ever... Like, he is an automaton. You get nothing out of DJ ever. But on this, he was animated as he ever is, and you could see the anxiety was creeping in. And you're right, he only had 3 bogeys on the back 9, but he wasn't making shots that he normally... The swing looked different.
Not one birdie all day.
No.
Not one birdie in a round. I'd love to look back through the stats and look at that. How often that happened? Not very often. Jason Day finished tied 11th on his way to the Emirates Australian Open. Hayesy, he's dipped out of the top 10 in the world for the first time in about 3 years, I think. He's number 11 in the world, even though he actually played pretty well that week. He's going okay, Jason, without winning.
Yeah, I don't think he's playing 72 full holes.
No.
Right. I think he's flashing in and out. We look back at that 2015 stretch when he won the US PGA Championship and absolutely dominated, like from start to finish. He was on top of his game, very rarely made a mental mistake. He's making them not hand over fist right now, but just with enough frequency to keep him out of the winner's circle because his good stuff's good.
I wonder whether he could come back to the Australian end of this month, win that event. First time he's ever won the Australian Open, and maybe it could sort of kickstart him for next year, like Spieth did the year that he came out and won.
Wouldn't that be
first
awesome?
Year. Yeah.
We saw more of you, Hayesy, on the TV coverage of the Asia Pacific Championship, Amateur Championship. And we did the eventual winner, or runner-up, or third place getter, 4th, 5th, 6th, or top 10. We saw more of you on the coverage that day. Well done on your attempt to find Minwoo's ball. No luck, unfortunately. But it was this is a great event. I've got to say, I don't know about you blokes, but I love watching this tournament. I think it's compelling.
The Asia Pacific Amateur Championship in its ninth staging at Royal Wellington has grown immeasurably. The crowds around, the New Zealand crowd came out not only supporting the local guys who weren't realistically in contention at any stage, they were 6 deep up and down the last fairway.
It's great.
It was absolutely phenomenal. It was like a big pro tournament.
What about the finish by Yu Sin Lin?
Yeah,
Lin.
Do we talk about personal experiences here? We probably do. We're pretty self-indulgent.
Some more than others.
So it's par 5, par 5, and he's hit it to what, 6 feet?
Yeah, so
he already was probably going to win, but to finish it off, second shot on a par 5.
He's stood on the 17th tee, equal with his countryman Yu Sin Lin, 17 years old, left-hander from Beijing, and he hits a driver 325 metres, pin high, chips it to a foot, kicks it in. He's one up. He hits a booming drive down the 18th, the par 5, and then watches his mate Zhang again hit the front of the green for 2. So he's got an eagle putt to sort of, it's tense. This is fully tense with a Masters and an open spot on the line. And from 216 yards, so what are we talking? That's 197-ish metres. Just rips a little 5-iron inside 3 feet.
It's beautiful.
It was one of the best shots you'll ever see from anyone in that situation, and just knocked in the eagle putt. So on the Monday, Andy, I got to play the course, and I went to that very spot, got the laser rangefinder out, sought his divot, put it down, hit a 5-iron, and I flushed it. I could not have hit it better, and I was approximately, again, we lasered it 28 metres short of where he finished.
Wow.
He's just a little unit, and he's coming to the Australian to play his second Australian Open, would you believe it, at the age of 17 from Beijing.
I didn't realise he was
that's
coming.
Great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
That is awesome.
And last year he just went. He told me they speak perfect English. The first, second, and equal third guys all from China.
They're all playing
which is awesome.
College golf in America, aren't they? All
yeah, most of them are.
Yeah.
But he's committed to the USC, but only from 2019. He's still got a year and a bit of high school left.
Is that right?
Yeah. He came out last year. He speaks perfect English, and didn't leave anywhere but the hotel or the golf course. And this year I said to him, "Oh, you need to go and experience Sydney." Yeah. And he's got his eyes lit up all around.
Night out with us.
That'd be a good idea. No, we'll take him. We'll show him what an Australian pub looks
Mike
like.
Clayton along and John Hogan.
I don't think he's up for that much.
Huggy's been busy this week. We'll get to that in a moment.
So Minwoo Lee finished third.
He's sold on Bondi, just so you know.
Okay.
He's dead keen on getting down to Bondi.
So Minwoo Lee finished third. Travis Smythe was back in the field, but he's now turning pro. What was the summation of the Australian?
The summation was they didn't have their A game when it counted the most, if I'm being perfectly blunt. And they would all say that if they were here. They played reasonably well without shining. And for these guys, this has been the grand final, depending on what football code you follow around Australia. You've got something you need to do at the end of the season. This was it, and they didn't get it done. So it's a disappointing week in the reality because, as good as Travis Smythe's year has been, and it has been exceptional. He's won a tour event on the Australasian Tour. He finished really high up in the US Am. He's done a heap of things. He's finished his amateur career ranked number 11 in the world. He's gutted because, this was his grand final.
Well, we spoke to him about it. He was so geared up for this event, wasn't he?
Yeah. And full credit to Minwoo Lee for running third with what he described maybe at best as his B- game. He probably played his C game by his standards. Had 3 or 4 hot holes on Friday, which met his expectations. Other than that, didn't really fire a shot. And I love them all dearly because they're great young fellas, above golfers. So they were flat, Andy, to be answering your question. And they're disappointed. China's now got 3 of these things, Korea 2, Japan 2, Australia 2. So it's far from a walk in the park that we perhaps might have hoped it could be for our boys and girls.
The region keeps getting stronger, not in the round ball. Like in just about every sporting endeavour, the region is getting stronger and stronger, which is great. I mean, we have to, if we're going to be competing against them in tournaments like this, then we need to up our game.
And just for the record, as we try and put all aspects of golf into this podcast, they announced during the week that there'd be a women's Asia Pacific Amateur for the first time next year, which is probably a little overdue, but fantastic nonetheless. At Sentosa in Singapore next February, I want to say, and the prizes for that are going to be a start in the next week's tournament straight after in Singapore. Might even be at the same course at Sentosa. Then a start in the Women's British Open and a start in the Evian Championship. So 2 majors and another big money tournament. So huge incentive for our girls, and probably the exact opposite of what I was just mentioning. They need to lift to compete against the Koreans in particular. So this is going to be great. It's going to be a great thing for our region.
Blakey, quick word on from a domestic perspective. The Queensland Open was run and won on the last weekend, and a name who I think we're all hoping he can rekindle. His very, very best was standing at the top of the heap at the end of the weekend.
Great story, Michael Sim winning that event. In Brisbane last week. He's 33 years of age, Hayesy. I mean, I looked this up during the week. In 2009, Michael Sim was ranked 34 in the world. 34 in the world. Last week he came into the event, he's 863rd. He's just had a terrible, tough time to recreate what he was as an amateur. And even when he was a young pro, he's had back injuries. He just hasn't been able to get it together. 33 now, got a kid coming pretty soon. Maybe he's going to get it together because he was very highly regarded when he was 19, 20, 21 years of age.
Well, let's hope so, because at his best back in those days, he was hashtag golden era. Yeah. He was potentially the flag bearer.
Yeah.
He was.
Christy
really
Kerr, Andy, I should mention Christy Kerr. The LPGA Tour is a young woman's tour by and large. I mean, a lot of the best players out there, they're only 21, 22 years of age. But Christy Kerr, at 40 years of age, rolls in a 35-footer on the last hole to win the Sime Derby in Kuala Lumpur. So that's a pretty awesome performance. She walked it in too, which is Christy Kerr's thing. She's one of the best putters you'd ever see. And Sarah Jane Smith was our top Aussie, tied 13th. And Sarah Jane Smith's had a pretty solid year. They're in Japan this week, the LPGA Tour. Minji Lee and Suo, and that'll be playing. And they're about 2 weeks away from the Tour Championships. So we've got about 4 Australians are in the mix there to play in the Tour Championships. So that was good.
And just while we're on the women's professional game, last week, a team announcement for the ALPG, so that includes the New Zealand girls as well, announced to play in the Queen's Cup. And Australia and New Zealand is sending a ripping team to compete in Nagoya. I think it's probably the same weekend as the Australian PGA Championship, 1st to 3rd of December. But Kari Webb's playing, Catherine Kirk, Sarah Jane Smith, Hannah Green, Whitney Hillier, Stacey Peters, and Sarah Kemp, which is fantastic, and also Catherine Bristow from New Zealand. So ALPG girls have sent a strong unit.
Yeah, good. That does sound like a good team.
Yeah.
Just on did you see Ron? Is it Ron Sirac or Ron Sirac?
Sirac.
See his tweet Mo Martin? He put out a tweet regarding Mo Martin.
No, I didn't see this.
On the LPGA tour this season, she's hit. Think about these numbers for all of us who have got the lefts or rights.
This will be a straight driving stat.
1,083 tee shots she's hit this year. she's missed 157 fairways. So
She's up around the 90%.
1,083 tee shots she's hit. She's missed the fairway 157 times. Doesn't make you angry?
She is a cracking person, Mo Martin. I think Hayesy, we played in a pro-am with her at Victoria a few years ago. She's just a terrific person. She hit one of the best shots you'd ever see in a Women's British Open a couple of years ago. 3-wood to the last hole. It nearly went in to win it. So she is a straight hitter.
She is.
Not a long hitter, but she's a straight hitter.
As good a golfer as she is, she's a better human.
The Golf Magazine rankings came out during the course rankings, world course rankings during the week, Andy. I never take too much of them, because they're sort of, by nature, they're kind of biased towards whatever courses the judges go to and stuff. But, Royal Melbourne West, number 11, Kingston Heath, 20. There's quite a few Australians in the courses in the top 100. Cape Wickham's in there. New South Wales, number 43. Barnbougle, 38. So Pine Valley's on top and Cypress Point.
Okay, just last one. We see that the announcer during the week that Australian Opens 2020-2022 will be played in Victoria?
No, it might have been a few podcasts ago.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Was I here when that was mentioned?
We touched on that one.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
He's lost it. He's away in Hollywood.
I've been a bit busy lately. Did you make any nominations as to which courses should...
Well, actually, we mentioned one that's very dear to your heart, and I think Clates was in that week, and we were talking about Peninsula being keen to get it.
Very happy if that happens.
It'd
be a magnificent venue for it.
Close off one course for parking and
it'd be a very
logistics.
Yep.
Don't know. Look, they're not going to struggle for somewhere to play. They are not going to struggle.
I'll just shut up then and make sure I listen to every podcast.
I'll say it because you probably can't without being seen to be biased, but Andy Blakey took me down to Peninsula a couple of weeks ago. My first hit ever on the South Course, and I will say that they are the best greens I've ever played on. So, and that includes the other Sandbelt courses. They are unbelievable.